Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing, an inside look at the many facets of work that is happening at the Department of Children and Families, between our staff, the families we serve, and our community partners. My name is Jaqueline Ford. I have had the honor of working for the department for almost 30 years. And although I may be familiar with many of the topics we bring to you, I have invited experts in those fields to help us dispel the myths and misconceptions that can often be barriers to our work. Join us as we open our doors and invite you to have a seat at our table. Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing. I am your host, Jaqueline Ford. Today, we have the honor of sitting with an extraordinary woman whose work has transformed the lives of countless children and families and communities. Our guest today, Shanika Hernandez, is the 2025 recipient of the prestigious Dr. Janet E. Williams Humanitarian Award, an award that recognizes unwavering passion, advocacy, and action in supporting Black children and families. For over 2 decades, Shanika has dedicated her life to championing educational equity, mentoring, and training child welfare professionals on the power of words and the impact of racial discrimination. Her influence extends beyond Connecticut, reaching national audiences with her thought-provoking presentation and community engagement initiatives. Today, we'll explore her journey, her passion, and her legacy. Welcome to the show, Shanika. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
And congratulations on your award.
Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. And I know that you're extremely humble. And this type of fanfare is not always comfortable for you. But before we get started to talk about your award and all of the work that you're doing now with the department, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been with the department?
Absolutely. So May will be my 21st year. So 21 years of social work supervisor. I was a trainer at the Academy for Workforce Development, and now I'm a children's services consultant with the agency.
And in what role are you playing with as a children's service consultant?
So I work within the Transitional Supports and Success Division, and I basically support all things adolescent, which is one of my hot topics. I love adolescents. I love transitional age youth. So I'm actually very happy to be there.
Oh, you're placed perfectly where you're meant to be.
Absolutely.
So what does this recognition for the award mean for you personally and professionally?
Honestly, it means everything. And I say that in the most humblest way that I can. It literally means everything. I've been with the agency 21 years, and it hasn't always been, let's just say, fun. I had some difficult moments. I had a lot of growth that had to happen. And to be at this place in not only my life, but in my career, to embrace kind of the authentic pieces of me and using my voice for what I've always known to use my voice for, but wasn't always supported in using my voice. It means a lot. It means a lot. It definitely gave me my reminder of my purpose, for sure.
Good. I'm glad that you have that reinforcement. So you've been with DCF, like you said, for almost 21 years. What inspired you to dedicate your career to child welfare and the advocacy for Black children and families?
What inspired me? I think just kind of growing up Black, if I can be frank, and knowing that there's not always those individuals that are behind you pushing you, knowing that you don't always have the supports and the resources and everything else at your hands. So it just kind of was something that I was made to be, if that makes sense. Dedicating my career, I will be honest, when I came to DCF, I was like, I'll be there for a short period and that's it. And then I wasn't.
And look at you now.
And then, became a foster parent. And then it was like, yeah, DCF became my life. And I'm still here doing what I love to do, and I'll continue for as long as I can.
So you mentioned that you're a foster parent, and I know that we don't have questions that are surrounding that journey that you've taken, but what made you step forward to be a resource for a child in need?
So this young lady was actually one of my youth on my caseload, and we were doing a lot of things. We were trying to find her right placement when she bounced and bounced and bounced and finally ended up in a shelter, with the thought of she'll go to a group home next because we couldn't find any resources for her. She actually went to therapy and said to the therapist, who asked, "What do you want? Where, like, if you had an idea of where you would want to go, where would it be?" And she said, "With Shanika." And so the therapist called me in her office and was like, "Is this even a possibility?" I'm like, "I don't know." I was maybe 2 years into my career. I'm like, I have no idea. So we brought it back to management and they assured me that it was something that people do and all of the steps that had to be taken. And I took them, and
Wow.
it was there from her on. I had some young people that weren't in DCF who just made a pit stop at my house. And then I had another young person who I was more or less her mentor, and she would come for holidays or breaks at college so that she had that consistent person to be with. I still have contact with her now. And then I have a younger daughter who I adopted, and
you adopt her through DCF
I
as
adopted
well?
her through DCF. Yeah.
Wow.
She was 3 and she'll be 15 in July.
Wow.
So yeah.
So you walk the walk and you talk the
Yes,
talk. So
yes.
how old is your daughter that you adopted years ago?
She is 34.
Wow.
Yeah, 34.
Wow. And what an
She
impact
was
you've
15
made.
when she came to me, and she's 34 now.
Wow. What a beautiful story. So DCF has really changed your life. I mean, from your
Absolutely.
career and that journey, and then adding to your family and the children that you have.
Absolutely.
Can you share a defining moment that in your career that you can think of? I mean, we all have powerful experiences and memories, but is there a defining moment in your career that just reaffirmed your commitment to this work?
I will have to say when I became a trainer at the academy. When I became a trainer, it was at that point that I started to mend some of the wounds that DCF had created. And I started to use my voice differently. And I actually started to embrace me. And watching as new staff came in and they kind of, not to toot my own horn, but they kind of just would eat up the knowledge that I just kind of gave off so freely and so willingly. It's funny though, because although at the academy I was in a different role, I was still always me. So as much as, I started to embrace who I was more authentically, I was always me in every aspect of my career. So it just so happens that at the academy, not being a direct supervisor to staff, I think allowed them to actually hear the message rather than getting lost in the messaging. And so essentially becoming a trainer definitely was a vital space in my career for sure.
Wow. I wouldn't have expected you to say that, but I think it's so powerful because it's education. You're educating and using your voice to, so what did you train on? What topics did you train on when you were there?
Oh, so I did mainly pre-service. So I did advancing anti-racism. I did engaging families, which was my favorite. I did our understanding the numbers. What else did I do? Engaging. I did our legal series, which is another one of my favorites. I did the educational training. I supported our educational consultants in doing that. I did a lot.
And you were a training supervisor
And
too.
I was a training supervisor prior to becoming a trainer.
Right,
Yeah.
and giving that, the new hires,
Correct.
who some of them are young.
Correct.
That foundation to build and be educated
Correct.
in that role.
Correct.
That's wonderful, and I'm sure that they remember you. We always remember our training supervisors.
Yeah, some of them may love me and some of them may not, but they all remember me.
Yeah, but appreciate you. I'm sure they all
absolutely,
do.
Absolutely.
Patty Zuccarelli was my training supervisor.
Got
and
it.
I always say that, she gave me that profound platform,
That aha
foundation
moment.
to continue to love the work.
Absolutely.
How has your own experience shaped your passion for mentoring and supporting youth and families of color?
Honestly, so when you step back and you think of our communities of color, and some of which have supports and some of which don't, I think just having the experience of, my parents kind of being my push My parents always being in my corner, rallying behind me. My parents always being, I can't even just say my parents, my family. You know, I have a younger brother and I have some sisters, and just kind of pushing my continued growth and understanding of kind of life. So when I got out of college, I went back to that same community, and it was like, what is here? Right? And I had some community activists that were very much involved in my life and my shaping. And there was a community center down in my neighborhood. And when he ever said to me, Shanika, I said, listen, Mr. Greg, I want to create something. I want something for these kids to get them off the street. I just want to give back. So he said, Shanika, write me a proposal. I don't think he expected me to do it. And I wrote him a proposal, and I founded a hip hop group, a dance group. It's called the Infamous Squad. My catchman was young people ages 12 to 18. And literally, I did that and worked for DCF for a very long time. Prior to all of that, I had mentors. I had Granville Academy, which was something that I was in, and it taught us about entrepreneurship. It taught us about how to basically get our mind to a space of getting out of the community that we were in. It afforded opportunities for us to explore other places, other states, other people. And I tell you, Judge Mosley, he was inspirational for a lot of the things that I just saw myself doing as I grew up. And, you know, not everybody has those same experiences. No. Not everybody has the same connections or the same people that are pouring into them. And so I just always took it upon myself to try to offer that, whether it be the families I was servicing as a worker, the staff I was supporting as a supervisor, or even the families I was pouring into as a supervisor, and then beyond. So I think it's just how I was built. Right. Honestly.
And how fortunate you were to have all that support. Absolutely. Tell me about your hip hop group.
Oh, the Infamous Squad is what we were called. I love my kids. Still to this day, it's funny, still to this day, one of the young people that kind of made a pit stop at my house, that she came into my life at 12 and she is still there at 32. Wow. Very much my daughter, very much one of my kids. She calls me Ma. Her mom and I are like, she calls me sis, and you know, we are family. And that's what my group was always. It was family. A lot of my kids have gone on and done great things. And every time we see each other, it's still that love of miss, you know? And they know to this day, if they're doing something and I can, I'm popping out. I'm coming to see. I want to give you your flowers. I want to acknowledge all of that stuff. I was hard on them. Yeah. To say the least. I was
tough
hard.
Love, right? Tough
but
love.
I definitely was that person who they could never do any wrong. I don't care what they did. They always came back. They would age out and then come back and go, Miss, can I? Yeah, absolutely. I had a cap to 18. It didn't last. The 18-year-olds came back. They just didn't want to stop. Yeah. We've done great things. We danced at True Colors Conference several times. We've been there. You know, they thought they were little celebrities. It was a good time. It was a good time.
Enriching their lives. That you definitely have done that. So you've been a strong advocate for educational equity. And what challenges do Black children and families have currently?
So if we think about how funding is actually afforded to educational institutes and, you know, from those property taxes, that's where the majority of the money comes from. And so when you have schools that are in inner cities and schools that are in places that are limited for funding, that's going to impact a lot of things. It's going to impact the teachers, the quality of teacher. It's going to impact the supplies, the resources that young people have. Maybe they don't have somebody who necessarily looks like them to actually give them something to strive for. Maybe they don't have access to, you know, opportunities like whether it be college tours or those type of things. So I feel like in order to support across the board, everybody has to have a fair chance. And so being an agent within DCF, I was always the social worker or the supervisor that said, well, you need to have a seat at the table. I understand. Exactly. I understand that they may have an educational consultant or what were they called?
Surrogate
The
parents.
surrogate parents. But you need to be at the table as their parent, right?
have
You
that
need to
voice.
make sure you have a voice for these young people, especially the Black and brown ones, because if they're in a school and nobody at the table looks like them,
They need that.
and having the understanding that education for not only a Black or brown young person, but a fostered person, you're already at a stance that you're lower. So how do we actually give them the support to be to a place of being at the same level, if not higher? So that's always been me.
Talk to me about the programs and the initiative you've led to bridge the gap.
Oh, well, bridging the gap. I think the primary pieces for me is just having that understanding, helping people to have the understanding of where our young people sit and the deficits that they hold, not because of anything that they chose to have on their own. Yes, you have students who don't always give their 100%, but then you have students that do give their 100%, but because they've been moved 4, 5, 6 times, things fall apart. So as a trainer at the academy, I used to always work collaboratively with our educational consultants. They would always bring my voice into the training, even though they trained it. They would always bring my voice into the training, which I 100% appreciated. Talking to new staff about the initiatives or the need to be at the table, talking to staff, period, about supporting our young people. Those are kind of some of the things that I've done to try to support that nudge, to remind people that even though we have other people that pay attention, we have to pay attention to.
Wonderful. In your experience, what does mentorship role play in empowering youth, particularly from the marginalized communities?
Giving somebody to look up to. Giving the, I can speak for myself. When I became a social worker back in 2004, just to even say that,
Seems like a long time
it
ago,
does.
right?
When I became a social worker and I was in a predominantly white office, there weren't very many people who looked like I did. And so it was an experience. I also came from a predominantly white high school. It was an experience. And what I learned from all of those experiences were, if you don't have somebody that you can look in the mirror and say, I can be that, you don't kind of think it. So it was when Vanessa Durantes, our previous commissioner, came to the office, and then it started to, I don't know if her coming was what kind of started to shift what the makeup of the office looked like, but it was when, she started to feed into me. She started to pour into my cup. I've had Aisha Gaines, I had Latasha Johnson. They poured into my cup. Tina Jefferson poured into my cup. So different people, but primarily for me, they were Black women who held high positions. Those women poured into me in ways that I don't think anybody understands.
What role models they were for you.
Exactly. I never saw myself as a supervisor until I touched those women at some point in my career. And it was like, oh.
And they saw you
I
that
can
way.
do that.
And they saw that you
exactly. So from that's just who I've been, right? I just want people to know, especially little Black girls, to know, yeah, you can do this.
They absolutely can.
Don't care about what nobody else says. You can do this. So
how can organizations like ours, like the Department of Children and Families and our community partners, how can we be better? How can we ensure this equity?
In my training, I talk about having the understanding that let's just say having the understanding, period. Your view is not the only view, right? And when you're dealing with a Black or brown person, understanding that there are certain life experiences that may differ. And although my experience may not be the same as your experience, it doesn't negate my experience. So I think as an agency, we have to have an understanding that our families that we're servicing, they already are at, just like our foster kids, are at a level that may very well be lower than, or not lower than, but in the aspect of they're less than, but lower than meaning they may have different agencies that are trying to connect to them, or different agencies that are supporting, and or different experiences, working 3 jobs to make ends meet. But now, DCF, you want to come in and tell me I need to go to this service. How do you expect that mom to do that? How do you expect that dad to support that experience when you also have the expectation that they be able to meet the needs of their kids? So having the understanding of what that looks like is, I think, the first step. Having that understanding of, okay, there's a great TED Talk, Chimamanda Adichie. She talks about the single story and how that's important for us to know. Don't come in the middle of a family story and think that you know what's happening in their life. You have to take the time, put the effort and the energy into going back to the start so that you can actually do the changing or supporting that you need to do to be able to get that family from point A to point B.
With a full understanding.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's like starting in the middle of a movie. I mean,
Absolutely.
You can't do that. The time is going by so fast, and I still have so many more questions to ask you. One of your signature trainings is called The Power of Words, the Long-Term Implications. And this has had a profound impact. Can you tell us about that training?
Oh, that's my baby. I tell you, I wrote that training from a space of, I need to stand in my purpose. And I stood in my purpose. I developed it from a place of trying to mend old wounds and help people to understand what is that? That trope of the angry Black woman. It's just that, a trope. And I've had some experiences within DCF where, being told, you need to talk more because your emails have a tone, but being able to understand within myself, there is no way there was a tone because I've read and rewrote this email 20 times. I've picked synonyms of words so that it was at least the softest word that it could be. No exclamation points, no big letters. I made sure that I do the code switching, the shifting in my brain to make sure that I'm not giving off exactly what I know that people see me as. But my passion looks different than yours. So I created that training because I needed staff to have an understanding when you're working with somebody that people's passions look different, but specifically for a family. Because Jackie, I ask you, if somebody knocked on your door and asked you about your kids, I think they would get a different version of Jackie too.
Absolutely.
So why can't our families be afforded that same grace? And so this training is basically that catalyst of having that understanding. I don't love courageous conversations because when you say courageous, that always puts people in a defense. And why does it need to be defensive when we're talking about equality? Why does it have to be defensive when we're talking about the difference between races and having an understanding of you have to get to point A before you can get to point B. If you come in at point B, you're never going to have a true understanding. So I wrote that training, and
are you able to still do the training in your role?
They do allow me to still do it. Yep, they still allow me to do it. I am thankful for that. The Academy and my current management team, they support me doing it, so I try to do it at least quarterly.
And trainees especially?
I do it with, right now it's for seasoned staff because the trainees have a vigorous training schedule. So when they are done with their training schedule, then they can come. But it's been well received, I have to say.
Yes. I'm so proud of all that you've done for the department.
Thank you.
And I'm going to jump to our end of our questions because we're running out of time. When you look back at your work, what impacts are you most proud of?
I would probably have to say the impacts that I'm making now. That constant reminder that we have to understand our own stuff before we can understand anybody else's. That would have to be what it is.
And then we can give that grace
Correct.
and dignity to others.
Correct.
Well, I thank you so much for being on the show. I'm going to have you come back.
Absolutely.
And I congratulate you on your award.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to have you have a seat at our table to talk to our viewers and to our staff who are watching.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for watching Doors to Hope and Healing. Shanika is an absolute treasure at the Department of Children and Families. And we welcome you to visit our website to learn more about our department and about the work that we do. Thank you again for watching.
Hi, I'm Jay McCormick, a board director at Nutmeg TV, your local public TV station right here in Farmington. Nutmeg TV has been an integral part of our community for over 30 years, providing a platform for residents to share stories, voice concerns, and celebrate achievements. It's a vital resource that connects us all, bringing countless local events to our TV screens. The topics are limitless and vary from being aware of scams to veterans helping veterans. Nutmeg TV continues to be here for the community. To continue this important work, we're asking for your support through a donation. Your contribution will ensure that Nutmeg TV remains a robust and relevant resource for our community. Thank you for supporting Nutmeg TV. Together, we can continue to amplify the voices and stories that make our community unique and vibrant.
To make a donation, simply visit our website at nutmegtv.com or call the office at 860-321-7405 for assistance.
The Saybrook Fish House in Canton has been serving fresh seafood, chicken, and prime steaks for 40 years. Experience one of our 3 unique dining room settings, 2 with fireplaces, or relax in our cozy pub with a craft beer, wine by the glass, or specialty cocktail while enjoying a meal from our new lighter fare pub menu. Serving lunch and dinner Tuesday through Sunday. Reservations accepted for parties of 2 to 42. Gift cards always available. The Saybrook Fish House, nestled at the crossroads of routes 44, 202, and 179 in Canton.